Hey, random could be a strategy now. You know what I'm saying?
So, since after all the facts which he thought tragic are real enough, the essence of his solution is that they are not true, as he thought of himself, they are just one set of phenomena. As interesting and as fatuously impotent to affect him as any other set, his personal grief was due to his passionate insistence on contemplating one insignificant congeries of events as if it were the sole reality and importance in the infinite mass of manifestation. It is thus that the perception of the universal joke leads directly to the understanding of the idea of self as conterminous with the universe, and at the same time one with it, creator of it, and aloof from it, which triune state is, as is well known, one of the most necessary stages of samadhi. It is the culmination of one of the two most important chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. There is a further merit in this matter, in the idea of laughter. It is the true physiological explosion and relaxation of a tension which produces it. Notably, such drugs as cannabis indica and anhelonium lewini, which do actually loosen the girders of the soul which give her breathing, cause immediate laughter at one of the most characteristic effects. Oh, the huge, wholesome contempt for the limiting self which springs from the sense of gargantuan disproportion perceived in this laughter. Truly it slays, with jolliest cannibal revels, that sour, black-coated missionary, the serious ego, and plumps him into the pot. Tee-hee! The voice of civilization, the messenger of the white man's god. Babble, babble, babble. Throw in another handful of sage, brother, and the sweet-smelling smoke rises and veils with exquisite shy seduction the shameless bodies of the stars. Beyond all this for practical value, since the signpost at every turn of the path of the wise reads danger, yet springing directly from it by virtue of this very slaying of the ego, it is the use of laughter as a safeguard of sanity. How easy for the charlatans of oratory to seduce the simple enthusiasm of the soul. What help have we unless we have the wit to know them as ridiculous? There is no limit to the abyss of idiocy, wherein the quacks would plunge us. Our only saving reflex is the automatic joke of the sense of humor. Robert Browning was not far from the kingdom of God when he wrote, "Rejoice that man is hurled from change to change unceasingly, his soul's wings never furled, and there is after all but little salt in the sneer of Juvenal's Sater est cum dicit Horatius evohe. For it is not yet to be recorded that any man beyond all this For it is yet to be recorded that any man brought aid or comfort to his fellow by moping. No, the universal joke, though it be not a true trance, is most assuredly a means of grace, and often proves the chief ingredient of the universal solvent." Back then to Browning, to the bravest last words he wrote while fourscore struck upon the timepiece of his years. Greet the unseen with a cheer, bid him forward, breast and back as either should be. Strive and thrive, cry speed, fight on, fair ever, there is here, amen. Were the world understood, ye would see it was good, a dance to a delicate measure. Aye, let us end with the most sudden, surprising word of a certain angel of the vision in the voice who left the seer lapsed in his solemn trance with the gay, laughing phrase, "But I go dancing." It is yet to be recorded that any tables of the law bar salvantur tabul cherisu. Indifference. The state of mind which is characterized by indifference is commonly called trance, but the misnomer is unfortunate. It is in fact a sense the precise contrary of a trance, for trance usually implies samadhi, and this state specifically excludes any such occurrence that implies a uniting, and this a wild dissociation, yet there is nothing herein to suggest necessarily any practice of the Black Brothers, for it is not, properly speaking, an attainment, but rather a convenient attitude, and it is one of the very greatest practical importance and use. One cannot remain indefinitely in any samadhi at the same time. It is proper to fill the intervals between gusts of positive work in such a way as to leave oneself as free as possible to take the next step. One should therefore cultivate a habit of mind which is not bound by any form of desire. The state of indifference is thus a form of that silence which is defense and protection. Indifference, the state of mind, and is cognate with the third noble truth of Buddhism, sorrow's ceasing. The general idea of the state is that the mind should react automatically to each and every impression. It does not matter whether the event be aye or nay. Blavatsky observes that the feeling is at least tinged with disgust, but this is an error. Such a state is imperfect. There should, on the contrary, be a quite definite joy, not in the impression itself, but in being indifferent to it. This joy springs doubtless from the sense of power involved, but that is again an imperfection. One should rather rejoice in the cognizance of the ultimate truth, that existence is pure joy, not in any feeling more immediate. It is to be observed that the attainment and maintenance of this state depends to a great extent on the mastery of several trances. For instance, one must be convinced of the first noble truth by the trance of sorrow, or it would not be logical to be indifferent to all things. There might be, in the absence of this perception of sabe pidukam, some impression which actually led with the third noble truth of Buddhism. Sabe pidukam, some impression which actually led to some state free from sorrow, and this is not the case. Freedom from sorrow depends on freedom from impression. Yet it would not be fair to say that this state of indifference was akin to that dullness which succeeds the acute spasm of sorrow. It is not the anesthesia of a nerve worn out by excess of pain. There is never any place in the curriculum of a magician for passivity, Of course, we here accept what may be called the active or willed passivity described in Liber LXV. Indifference is to be an intensely active condition. One may compare it with the ease of a skilled fencer who meets and deflects every possible attack of his antagonist with equal vigor, unconscious of his acts because he has trained his eye, wrist, and even his blade to think for themselves. Thus, indifference is the spiritual form of the automatic consciousness of the adept, and this resides in Yesod. Thus, indifference is the spiritual form of the automatic consciousness of the adept, and this resides in Yesod, the place of the fortress on the frontier of the abyss. It's described in Liber 418 in the 11th ether. This indifference being a habit of normal mind, it is easier to attain than any true samadhic state, and involves less technical ability. This is particularly the case because, as noted above, the trance of sorrow has been an almost necessary preliminary to the proper understanding of what it implies. The method, therefore, of acquiring the word is to be preferred to attaining. Indifference is simple. It is, in effect, the way of the Tao. The following sorites may prove useful to the aspirant. Existence is only to be understood as a continuum. All parts of existence are therefore ultimately equivalent, each being equally necessary to complete the whole. Each event is thus to be received with equal honor, and the reaction to it made with equal indifference. To offer a practical parallel, to offer a practical parallel, suppose one is to receive £1,000, and this amount is paid over in diverse coins with IOUs for various sums. Since one knows in advance that the balance in one's favor is £1,000, one does not get excited on the appearance of any particular item but goes on steadily counting, making the right reaction. Whether a plus or a minus item is at issue with perfect calm and accuracy. Each entry in the account may be different, but one's mental attitude is invariable. The common error of the unphilosophical mind is indeed due to ignorance of the true nature of the soul. One is apt to suppose that each event as it occurs may be good or bad, may indicate that one is winning or losing, but as soon as one is certain that the issue is facetious, that it has been determined beforehand, it becomes absurd to be affected by one incident in the illusory process which nature uses symbolically to express the fatality of truth rather than by any other. It is interesting to note that this method of acquiring indifference is quite independent of any experience of the trance of sorrow. It is a simple and normal consideration based on strictly thelemic premises. It is thus most highly to be recommended. The methods of the dead Aeon of Osiris were in question of separateness from the universe is critical. For one thing, for another, it is a mistake to be dependent on such a theory as that implied in the first noble truth in its outer aspects. It is altogether better to adopt the purely intellectual attitude and anchor it subsequently in neshama. By simply transcending the normal rational mind in the usual way of the method of contradiction or equating of opposites, such as is described in Kong's Unpacks and in the best essays on the Holy Kabbalah. It is apt, moreover, to lead to several types of error in regard indifference as a state inferior to samadhi. In particular, one may tend to think of it as passive, as imperfect, as an interregnum, whereas it should be considered as a state of peace and victory. It need only be added in conclusion that indifference is not perfect until it has entered into full possession of at least one samadhic trait, automatism. As long as there remains any need of conscious effort in dealing with any impression, any need to remember the process by which the state is reached, or even any need of conscious interference with or cognizance of the purely spontaneous elastic reflex reaction, the aspirant to the summum bonum, true wisdom and perfect happiness, has not adequately acquired the habit of indifference. Mastery. The aim of him who would be master is single. Men call it personal ambition. That is, he wants his universe to be as vast and his control of it as perfect as possible. Few fail to understand this aim, but many fail in the formulation of their campaign to attain it. Some, for instance, fill their purse with fairy gold, while when they try to use it is found to be dead leaves. It need only be added in conclusion that it... Others attempt to rule the universe of another, not seeing that they cannot even take true cognizance thereof. The proper method of extending one's universe, besides the conventional apparatus of material science, is tripartite: evocation, invocation, and vision. Control is a matter of theoretical and practical acquaintance with magical formula, but notably also of self-discipline. The ground is to be consolidated, and all contradictions resolved in higher harmonies by the various trances. So much indeed is obvious to superficial consideration. Strange then that so few magicians take the further step of inquiry as to the availability of the instrument. Short-sighted selfishness, good sooth, to take for granted that one's self is sure to find its proper medium to hand for its next adventure. Here the magical memory is a virtue, marvelous to correct perspective, for how often in the past has one's life been all but sheer failure? For how often in the past has one's life been all but sheer failure from the mere lack of proper means of self-expression? And who among us can be seriously satisfied today knowing what we do with even the most perfect human instrument? It is then no more than simple good sense for the magus to formulate his general political aim in some such terms as these: to secure the greatest possible freedom of self-expression for the greatest possible number of points of view, of which issue the practical aspect may be phrased as follows: to improve the human race in every conceivable way, so as to have available for service the greatest possible variety of the best instruments imaginable. And this is the rational justification of the apparently imbecile and too often sentimental, hypocritical aphorism, "Love all beings, serve mankind," that is upon the political plane, for also these two phrases contain one. For how often in the one, the magical formula, which is the key alike of invocation and of trance. 2, the implicit injunction to make clear the way of the magician through the heavens by right ordering of every star. The word serve is indeed misleading and objectionable. It implies a false and despicable attitude. The relation between men should be the brotherly respect which obtains between noble strangers. The idea of service is either true and humiliating or false and arrogant. The most common and fatal pitfall which menaces the man who has begun to extend his universe beyond the world of sense perception is called confusion of the planes. To him who realizes the All-One and knows that to distinguish between any two things is the basic error, it must seem natural and even right to perform what seems perforce acts of love between incongruous ideas. He has the key of languages. Why then should not he, the Englishman, avail himself of it to speak in Hebrew without learning it?
And they were so condescending to each other. Like, I just want to be like, hey man, hey guys, this is a hard problem. Many people disagree. This one is challenging. Stop calling each other retards.
Yeah, they're just going back and forth. Not really bringing anything. That's crazy. What's up, Dodd?
Oh, wow, I'm Doge. Hey, guys, how you doing? My impression of you, Doge.
Is that projection?
It's erection.
I prefer contemplation after erection.
I prefer constipation before erection.
I prefer deification before putrefaction.
I prefer edification before subtraction.
I prefer constipation after multiplication.
I prefer sublimation after annotation.
So, what do you think about the theory that this app and everybody on it is essentially an absurdist comedian, but everybody's working feverishly to conceal that fact?
I think you're an absurdist comedian. I think most people on this app are like barely human clowns, but not unintentionally. And then like you got like a small number of people who are just interested, like curious, interesting people, and like I don't know. There's like 20 people on this app that I've talked to that have had like a real good faith conversation with, whereas the vast majority of people are just, I don't even know how to describe it. How crazy they are.
My YouTube account got deleted. So, what do you have you ever experimented with hypnosis or trance state, cannabis, wine?
Yeah, I'm pretty hip, and I'm also trans. No, I'm just fucking with you. I am not very easily hypnosable, but I love weed, and I love like some of my favorite experiences in my life was like when I had like I remember one time I was at an event and there was like 20 people and we started like stomping our feet and like humming, and there was like this emergent song that like came out of all of us. Like no one was like directing the song. It just kind of like emerged, and it was just like that was very very trance-like because it very much felt like the boundaries between us were dissolving, and the song had like a life of its own. It was very pleasurable.
So in terms of impression or impressions, like enlightenment, basically not forming opinions or being impacted, meaning that like not that we're living in a simulation, but that part of the problem of life for a lot of people is that they're so impressionable and that they essentially generate opinions about everything. And in this app, you can, express your opinion about everything. And that's part of the problem in terms of self improvement and self management and optimization. That people are just they're do they're being automatic, but they're not. I guess you could call it automatism, meaning that you have the best solution for every particular, uh, situation, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does.
I don't know, bro.
It's basically the trance state where it's not that you're unmoved, but that you no longer have opinions on all these topics that never end. I mean, it's you. I like to think, that this is the song that never ends, and everybody's singing it, but eventually it becomes really boring and annoying. Thus, you stop singing it and you try to optimize and do something, better, like education, maybe.
What y'all think about the title?
Alright, people can't sell hyperboles because they want to feel like, validate me, tell me I'm right. I want to be told I'm right.
Is that also to you too?
Kinda, yeah. I think that like the vast majority of people aren't that curious. As in like you show them counter evidence and they're not like, whoa, cool. They're like, no, boo. And like I think genuinely curious people are not doing as much as just tell me I'm right. Like I don't want people to tell me I'm right, but like the majority of people do. The majority of people, if I give them a counter argument to their worldview, they're not like, whoa, thank you, Sam. That was so interesting. Wow, now I can have better worldview now. Awesome. It's like that's not the reaction most people give. And like, yeah.
You think if everybody was living according to your worldview of how you see things, there would be nothing to argue about and everything would be just perfect?
I do think that like if people generally had my view towards forming beliefs and like changing your mind, if everyone had that, the world would be like insanely better. But I have other flaws. Like if everyone was like me, the world wouldn't be amazing. But if they just had that one trait about me, where they like change their mind quickly and actually want to know arguments against their worldview and like actually care about evidence, like if they had that, that would be just like such an improvement of the world. Because like I don't know, people are such incurious, stubborn people who don't check if things are true. They don't Google stuff. They spend their whole life dedicated to a thing. They didn't spend a half hour checking if it's right. Like it's just crazy to me.
What about the people that hold this, but hold to that, like hold to the same thing you hold to, but just have a different opinion on it, a different conviction? Do you think y'all would ever lead somewhere, or it would just be the battle of egos?
I think that people sometimes just have battles over like they just want different stuff, and it's never a matter of like they don't disagree on anything. They just disagree on, well, I'm me and you're you, so and I want your stuff and you want my stuff, so like we're gonna fight. Like I think that can happen. So just because we agree on like certain principles doesn't mean that we won't necessarily fight. But there is something that seems to be happening where the smarter you get, the more evidently humble you are, or the more willing you are to try to find win-win solutions. You know, instead of just like thinking that the only thing you can do is fight. Like there might be a win-win solution that you didn't see before, and if you were more curious about it, you could have found it.
Neutral, you want to say something to the title, bro? Kareem is Like, Kareem, you want to say something to the title?
When can people stop talking about their beliefs? Part 2. One, I think people like to show off how good of a lifestyle, how good their God is, almost like glorifying, like, oh, my God is the best, like he's the shit. And then the other one is they trying to recruit. The more people that do like you, the better you feel about doing it. Kind of like when you was in gym class or anywhere else, it's kind of weird to be the only one playing the game or dodgeball by yourself. But if you can recruit all the kids to come play with you, it makes you feel more confident about walking around doing it. It feels kind of weird when you're the only one walking around talking about Jesus while everybody else looking at you crazy. So I think it's about their pride. It's also about showing off and recruiting.
You believe in God, correct?
Yep.
You think if everybody was just living based on how your worldview is and just believing in God and had faith, the world would be much better? Like there would be no need to argue about beliefs and anything. Because everybody has God and all these atheists don't need to go against nobody.
No, I think, particularly religion, but people believing in God can have a negative effect, so it's not necessarily going to be a good thing if every single person to start believing in it, because, it's quite a few people that use it the wrong way. But I guess if everybody was on the same straw, like everybody was on the exact same line of God and how to follow and all that, then yeah, that'd be a good thing. But at that point, it wouldn't be any changes. Like, well, I mean, I guess no. If everybody believed in God the same way, that could be a good thing because there's no negative opinions. There's no battle there because we all agree that, oh yeah, that's the same guy. Yep, that's what you're supposed to be doing. Yep, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I would say that would make it a better world. Only if everybody on the exact same accord.
Yeah, but that's an all or nothing statement. I mean, when you have Thanksgiving dinner, do you just eat turkey? I mean, it's the cornucopia that gives.
Pretty much.
Well, the point is, the diversity is the beauty. I mean, without diversity, there's no beauty. It's just boring.
Have you ever experienced a world without diversity to even say that?
Have I experienced a world without diversity? Yes, I've been in the military where everything is standard and formalized and procedural and, absolutely
That's not exactly
identical.
true, though.
Well, what you're saying is not exactly true.
No, it's actually quite true. And you have nothing to disprove what I said. And also what you said can be disproven. And I'm also part of a military family. I can say for a fact that was a lie.
It's my opinion. It's not a lie.
Yeah, so it's not really truth, though, either, right?
Well, if you know the math of the Earth, you would know that the truth here on Earth, is right now.
What does that mean?
It means that most people think a great God is going to come from the sky, take away everything, and make everybody feel high. But if you know your worth here on Earth, you will stand up for your right. You'll see the light, and you're going to party.
Right. And where did you learn this? The book, scroll, Google, or did you just fall asleep and you had a dream? Oh, it looks like he cut out. Okay. But yeah, I think that'll be a nice attempt.
So
I like diversity.
I'm sorry, bud.
No, you go ahead. I was just going to say I like diversity. I like that people challenge each other. I think it's a good thing that we challenge each other. So, some people, like, even the people that believe in God, they always be like, oh, God, get me out of this situation. Why are you putting me through this and all this and that? I mean, at the same time, I kind of want people to challenge me. If I believe in God, you're welcome to challenge me. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I try to tell people all the time, God and religion and all that, whatever you believe in, is not meant to be something to necessarily defend. I'm not here to defend what I believe. I'm not here to prove what I believe. I will fail at both because it's not meant to be done. Like, if you believe in God, believe in it. There you go. Live that lifestyle. If you don't believe it. Live that lifestyle. But me sitting up every day trying to prove to you and battle so hard to prove that my God is real and this and that and every little thing about him, man, I don't live long enough to be
trying to give a fuck about you not believing. That's on you. Go find your life. You know what I'm saying? Go find out what's for you. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, based on your perspective, you basically said it would be a better world if everybody just believed in God, had some good things to say, if it was all one God. So you think the world will be like in collapse and much worse if we all was just an atheist and believed in no God?
No, I think it's the vice versa. Same. I think if everybody's on the same accord, because there still be diversity, which that's why they understand Dodge. There still be diversity. You can be whoever you want to be and do what you want to do. It's just simply we all believe in the same thing, so we all follow that pattern of what we feel that is right, and your morals and all that stuff and all that will change, and they'll all be on the same accord. It's kind of like now, we all, well, not all, that's the bad part about it. Most of us know that raping and stealing and killing is wrong, right? Imagine if we're all under the umbrella, every single person in the world believed that also, and there wasn't those exceptions. That's how.
To him who realizes the All One and knows that to distinguish between any two things is the basic error, it must seem natural and even right to perform what seems perforce acts of love between incongruous ideas. He has the key of languages. Why then should not he, the Englishman, avail himself of it to speak in Hebrew without learning it? The same problem offers itself daily in a myriad subtle shapes. Command these stones to become bread. Throw thyself down from the pinnacle of the temple, as it is written, He shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. These last 4 words throw light upon the fog of Choronson. Restriction be unto him in the name of Babylon. For his ways are the ways of nature, who hath appointed between the planes a well-ordered relation. To deform this device is not and cannot be the way. The act of love, so seeming, is a false gesture. To him who... It doesn't even work. For his ways are the ways of nature, who hath appointed between the planes a well-ordered relation. To deform this device is not, and cannot be, thy way. The act of love, so seeming, is a false gesture, for such love is not love unto will. Be thou well aware, O thou who seekest to attain to mastery of doing aught miraculous, the surest sign of the master is this, that he is a man of like passions with his fellows. He does indeed transcend them all and turn them all to perfections, but he does this without suppression, for everything that lives is wholly or distortion, for every form is a true symbol of substance or confusion, for admixture is hatred, as union is love. Initiation means the journey inwards. Nothing is changed or can be changed, but all is truly understood with every step. The Magus of the gods, with his one word that seems to overturn the chariot of mankind in ruin, does not in fact destroy or even alter anything. He simply furnishes a new mode of applying existing energy to established forms. The invention of electric machines has in no way interfered with matter or motion. It has only helped us to get rid of certain aspects of the illusion of time and space, and so brought the most intelligent minds to the threshold of the magical and mystical doctrine. They have been forced to imagine the possibility of the perception of the universe as it is, freed of conditions. That is, they have been given a glimpse of the nature of the attainment of mastery, and it is surely but a little step to take for the leaders of natural science, mathematics, the guiding star, that they should understand the compelling necessity of the great work and apply themselves to its achievement. Here, the great obstacles are these. Firstly, the misunderstanding of self, and secondly, the resistance of the rational mind against its own conclusions. Men must cast off these two restrictions. They must begin to realize that self is hidden behind and independent of the mental and material instrument in which they apprehend their point of view, and they must seek an instrument other than that which insists, with every single observation, and impressing on them what is merely its own most hateful flaw and error, the idea of duality. The aeon of Horus is here, and its first flower may well be this, that freed of the obsession of the doom of the ego and death, and of the limitation of the mind by reason, the best men again set out with eager eyes upon the path of the wise, the mountain track of the goat, and then the untrodden ridge that leads to the ice-gleaming pinnacles of mastery. Here, the great obstacles are these. Okay, this is trance. What up, Martel? Okay, this is called trance. The word trance implies a passing beyond the conditions which oppress. The whole and sole object of all true magical and mystical training is to become free from every kind of limitation. Thus, body and mind in the widest sense are the obstacles in the path of the wise. The paradox, tragic enough as it seems, is that they are also the means of progress. How to get rid of them, to pass beyond or to transcend them, is the problem. And this is as strictly practical and scientific as that of eliminating impurities from a gas. or of adroitly using mechanical laws. Here is the inevitable logical flaw in the sorites of the adept, that he is bound by the very principles which it is his object to overcome, and on him who seeks to discard them arbitrarily, they haste to take a terrible revenge. It is in practice, not in theory, that this difficulty suddenly disappears. It is in practice, not in theory, that this difficulty suddenly disappears. For when we take rational steps to suspend the operation of the rational mind, the inhibition does not result in chaos, but in the apprehension of the universe by means of a faculty to which the laws of the reason do not apply. And when returning to the normal state, we seek to analyze our experience, we find that the description abounds in rational absurdities. On further consideration, however, it becomes gradually clear, because the habit of trance must be firmly fixed before its fulminating impressions are truly intelligible, that there are not two kinds of thought or of nature, but one only. The law of the mind is the sole substance of the universe, as well as the sole means by which we apprehend it. There is thus no true antithesis between the conditions of trance and those of ratiocination and perception. It is in practice. There is thus no true antithesis between the conditions of trance and those of ratiocination and perception. The fact that trance is not amenable to the rules of argument is impertinent. We say that in chess a knight traverses the diagonal of a rectangle measuring 3 squares by 2, neglecting its motion as a material object in space. We have described a definite limited relation in terms of a special sense, which works by an arbitrary symbolism. When we analyze any example of our ordinary mental processes, we find the case entirely similar. For what we see, hear, etc., depends upon idiosyncrasies for one thing, and upon conventional interpretation for another. Thus we agree to call grass green, and to avoid walking over the edge of precipices, without any attempt to make sure that any two minds have exactly identical conceptions of what these things may mean, and just so we agree upon the moves in chess. There is thus no true antithesis between the conditions of trance and those. Saksham Sharma, Saksham Sharma. For what we see here depends upon idiosyncrasies, for one thing, and upon conventional interpretation for another. Thus we agree to call grass green and to avoid walking over the edge of precipices without any attempt to make sure that any two minds have exactly identical conceptions of what these things may mean. And just so we agree upon the moves in chess. By the rules of the game, then, we must think and act, or we risk every kind of error. But we may be perfectly well aware that the rules are arbitrary, and that it is, after all, only a game. The constant folly of the traditional mystic has been to be so proud of himself for discovering the great secret that the universe is no more than a toy, invented by himself for his amusement, that he hastens to display his powers by deliberately misunderstanding and misusing the toy. He has not grasped the fact that just because it is no more than a projection of his own point of view, it is integrally himself that he offends. Here lies the error of such pantheism as that of Mansur el-Hallaj, who Sir Richard Burton so delightfully twits in the Qasidah with his impotence. Mansur was wise, but wiser they who smote him with the hurled stones. And though his blood a witness bore, no wisdom might could mend his bones. God was in the stones no less than within his tarband wrapping. And when the twain crashed together, one point of perception of the fact was obscured, which was in no wise his design. To us, however, this matter is not one for regret. It is, like every phenomenon, an act of love. And the very definition of such act is the passing beyond of two events into a third, and the withdrawal into a silence or nothingness by simultaneous reaction. In this sense, it may be said that the universe is a constant issue into trance. Here lies the... And in fact, the proper understanding of any event by means of the suitable contemplation should produce the type of trance appropriate to the complex event individual in the case. Now, all magic is useful to produce trance, for A, it trains the mind in the discipline necessary to yoga. B, it exalts the spirit to the impersonal and divine sublimity, which is the first condition of success. Why? It enlarges the scope of the mind, assuring it full mastery of every subtler plane of nature, thus affording it adequate material for ecstatic consummation of the Eucharist of existence. The essence of the idea of trance is indeed contained in that of magic, which is preeminently the transcendental science and art. Its method is in one chief sense love, the very key of trance, and in another the passing beyond normal conditions. The verbs to transcend, to transmit, to transcribe. And in fact, the verbs to transcend, to transmit, to transcribe, and the like are all of cardinal virtue in magic. Hence love is the law, love under will is the supreme epitome of magical doctrine and its universal formula. Nor need any man fear to state boldly that every magical operation soever is only complete when it is characterized in one sense or another by the occurrence of trance. It was ill done to restrict the use of the word to the supersession of dualistic human consciousness by the impersonal and monistic state of samadhi. Fast bubbles the fountain of error from the morass of ignorance, when distinction is forcibly drawn between any one thing and any other thing. Yea, verily, and amen. It is the first necessity, as it is the last attainment of trance, to abolish every form and every order of individuality, so fast as it presents itself. The verb. By this ray may ye read in the book of your own magical record the authentic stigma of your own success. Energy is the sacramental motive of event. It is thus omnipresent in manifestation by interruption and compensation, and otherwise by the corresponding withdrawal. In this connection, let there be remembered the full formula of Tetragrammaton. There are, however, three main types of special experience which are noteworthy landmarks in the process of initiation and of urgent practical value to the magician. The symbol of the sacrament being observed, they differ as do the three participants therein, the god, the priest, and the communicant. In the highest, that is of Ketha, the energy radiates wholly from oneself, that is, one is entirely identified with Hadit. In the middle, that of Kokma, the energy passes wholly through oneself, that is, one assumes the functions of Tahuti. In the lowest, that is of Gabura, the energy impinges wholly upon oneself, that is, one absorbs it as a man. In all cases, the energy of which it is here written is not particular or personified. It is energy in itself without quality. The highest mode can only be fully apprehended by an ipsissimus. It is the final attainment. It is the active counterpart of the higher form of the beatific vision. The middle mode is proper to a magus, or to one aspiring to his prophetic function. It is described, and the method of attaining it set forth in the book called Opus Lutetianum. The lowest mode is the particular task of a major adept. It is best accomplished by means of the secret of the sanctuary of the gnosis, IXOTO. Of the highest mode, it would be neither fit nor useful to treat more intimately. The middle mode concerns each magician in his peculiar. The lowest, that is of Gabura. Okay, that's called trance. We're not quite finished with it, but we'll be back.
19-year-old has more experience than whoever they had already in place to go through the federal websites and try and figure out on the back end what is and isn't DEI. I mean, they might have put it in a code
to make free trade, then the math is wrong. If the goal is to get rid of deficit, I think it's a bad goal, but then at least the math makes sense.
Yes, it is correct, because the way, if it's a reciprocal tariff, if it's a reciprocal tariff, then you are putting an incentive for people to lower down their tariffs and then end up hopefully in a free trade situation.
Yeah.
Right now,
And
with
that's
this
how I
math,
understood it was.
with this math, you're not incentivizing them to lower down their tariffs. Because it has nothing to do with their tariffs. It has everything to do with the deficit.
So if it's linked to a deficit and not the tariff, then the goal is never going to be accomplished because it's not really reciprocal to the tariffs.
The goal
It's
won't be.
related to the
Did you see what
deficit.
China did? China is the only country that matters. So there's 50 countries allegedly that are talking to Trump to do the art of the deal. I don't care. The only country that matters is China. And you don't want to fuck with the Chinese supply chain. You just don't want to do that.
What did they do?
Nothing. They raised tariffs. They put more tariffs. And then Trump said he's going to
retaliate. Now 50% on top of, what was it, 40% yesterday?
Okay, and he does that, and then they're going to increase their tariffs also. Okay, you want manufacturing to come back to the
Well,
U.S.?
400% on Chinese imports.
They can go
100% tariffs.
They can go 300. Yeah, they can go 500. The sky is the limit, right? But so you want to produce in the U.S., but at what cost? Because everything you have comes from China. So it's just Trump is retarded. I'm sorry. It's just what it is.
Probably use some Mexico.
Yeah, I don't think Mexico will substitute China.
Won't be.
I'd like to push back and say that Trump isn't retarded. It's actually you who's projecting. You're actually retarded, Rabbi, aka Randy.
I heard someone talking this morning, and they made a very good point. Like, it was very smart. They said, like, we're actually in a place of power owing them money, right? Like, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
It's not quite how we're.
Maybe you think that.
It's not like China loaned us $1 trillion, and we're going to say we're not paying you back.
Yeah, but the
We
Chinese are
sold-
dumping the bonds.
Yeah,
That's
we
why I said
sold
dumping the
T-notes, and they own our T-notes. But if you own a T-note, then you're in the same bucket. So it's not like the U.S. can just say we're no longer paying back China. Which, by the way, would tank our economy. We no longer.
They're dumping the
Not
bonds
really.
anyways.
And
Didn't you
they're
guys see how it's
dumping
like yesterday and before and Friday? Didn't you see how it's like? The stock market goes down, the bond market is also going down. Yeah, the Chinese are dumping it. They don't want that.
So the market tanked. So the administration is touting out the messaging that what they're really trying to do is get the bond market so we can restructure the debt. But that didn't work. Now they're claiming
Because the Chinese dumped it.
because the Chinese dumped it. So now what they're claiming
Fuck
is
the
they want.
Chinese.
Well, the Chinese is a different argument. This is the problem. The Chinese is a geopolitical argument. If the argument is that our supply chain is too tied up in China, 25% of our medication comes from there, and if there's another black swan event or a war, then blah, blah, that's a good argument, actually. It's a really solid argument, but that's not the argument the administration is making. The argument they're making is that we're getting ripped off because of the trade deficit. That's a bad argument.
Yeah,
That is a horrible argument. I can't believe I agree with Maya. Shit, what's happening, man?
Maybe I'm wrong.
Man, I mean, maybe, hey, but that's the first time I agree with them. No, that is exactly what.
I told you, you guys would get along.
No, I think math is not really subject to debate.
Right.
It's just math, and the math
You
is
can
math.
fool people with them.
Not fine.
And
That's
definitely
I understand that. I know for a fact that
Definitely
it
with
has nothing to do
Bayesian
with tariffs.
statistics. I mean, like, Americans get so fooled with Bayesian statistics.
Oh no, that's only the blacks.
No, sorry. I know that you'd love to go back to being racist, but no.
I am
Okay.
racist. I mean, they do struggle with per capita. Per capita is an issue.
No, they also struggle with percentages. There's like differences, and like they say like 90%, yes, 90% of what? No, 90%.
So I think black people understand ratios. I think they don't understand per capita.
No, I'm
Yeah,
talking about Americans in general.
Oh man, I love black people.
That is so hilarious.
It's true. Like, have you
When
seen
people,
natural-
you tell them anyone, just try it, Meyer. Anyone in the app, you tell them something about per capita, and they're lost, completely lost.
Yeah, black people. Everyone. And Muslims struggle with it too. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, but Muslims struggle with everything.
With the third noble truth of Buddhism.
The correct?
Sorry.
The only thing they don't struggle with is the Quran.
No, the correct struggles with numbers. It has like over 100% in error.
Yeah. that my friend was reading the other day something from the Quran that said the first wife of Muhammad was in the age of 22 or 40. It's like, what the fuck? You know?
Right.
So yeah, they struggle with numbers.
They do struggle with numbers. Yeah, but we all know that. Regardless, just go.
I don't think we
as
should
a
be
social experiment. Go to black
Americans
people.
get fooled with numbers all the time as well. Like, watch during the pandemic, they tell people that 92% efficacy. Ask them to explain what that means. They have no idea.
And that's been my claim since day one. American conservatives don't know basic math, which is why I suppose Trump is doing what he does, and he can get away with it. But I'm just saying, like, if you just look into, did you guys know that Howard Lutnick, he has a long position on the bonds, and so he was expecting to actually make a shit ton of money, but the Chinese fucked him over by dumping the bonds. Did you guys know that?
No.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
If it's a long-term position, it's too early to know. We have a long way to go.
Yeah, but the Chinese are the biggest owners of the bonds if they dump all of them.
I get it, but the Chinese are. Yeah, but this is like losing a battle, not losing a war.
Well, it depends on how. I mean, it could be losing the war, though. I mean, this is.
It could be the first battle of many. It could be not.
Look, there's only two countries in the world that you don't want to fuck with. It's China and the U.S. Like, you just don't want to fuck with them. It's just what it is. It's simple.
Okay, one question. So if this is not reciprocal tariffs because C is related or linked to the deficit, and so my theory that it says, okay, well, if the tariffs go down, the reciprocal tariffs go down.
Here, the great obstacles are these. Firstly, the misunderstanding of self. And secondly, the resistance of the rational mind against